It is not the critic who counts, not the person who points out how the strong person stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the person who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends themselves in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if they fail, at least fail while daring greatly, so that their place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who never know victory nor defeat. Theodore Roosevelt, 1910.
Thank you, Jennifer Simmons. Let's give her another round of applause, please. You all were quiet for about 2 minutes. I wanted to compliment everybody. That was really, really great. Almost everybody. I can see a couple of chatters right now. But thank you for being quiet, paying attention. And the reason that we chose that is I think this is a group of the people who are in the arena and fighting the battle and getting bloodied, et cetera, et cetera. So thank you. So I have a question for all of you, which is how do you use Rotary to get to the next level? And I think it's a question that we all can ask ourselves constantly so that we're not afraid, we don't live in fear, we're not the types of people who don't want to try because you might fail. So both as individuals and also as a group, our club's been around, as you all know, for over 100 years and can be stuck at times. So I'd like you to all help me. Pick up the phone, give me a call about things that we as a group, as a club can do to make San Jose and the world a better place. So let's not be stifled by the petty and mundane issues of the world. So let's be fearless and do more. I want to thank my friend Jeremy Harris. Where's Jeremy? Jeremy over there. Thank you. Every week, Jeremy is going to play music with some kind of a theme. Today it was Harold Arlen. I think last week was George Gershwin, and he might do other interesting things, but when you get a chance, thank him. Now is the time for introductions of guests, so if you could make your way to the microphone in the center and introduce your guests, I'd appreciate it. Bring it on.
Hi, President Steve. My guest today is Tobruk Blaine, and she is the director of Beyond Sparta, which is a cutting-edge career development and public service program for San Jose State student athletes. She's helped them get jobs all over the valley, and so if anyone in the room is hiring or looking for an intern, the person with all the keys to the bright minds is at that table right there.
Welcome, Tobruk. Thank you. Tom Bondi.
Hello there, HRH. My guest today is Leslie Corsilia, currently Director of Housing, Director at SV at Home, and I submitted her application today as a Rotarian.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tom. Jim, how are you?
Doing well, President Steve. I have three guests today. The Chief Communications and Marketing Officer for the City of San Jose, Mr. Andy Lutsky.
Welcome, Andy.
The Digital Services Manager for the Mayor's Office, Ms. Esmeralda Bautista.
Welcome.
And an all-star intern in Mayor Liccardo's office, Mr. Trevor Eckhoff.
Welcome, Trevor. Thank you, Jim. Todd, how are you?
Hello, President Steve. I have two guests today. We have Jimmy Lopez. Jimmy is with, I got to read this, Breakout Prison Outreach nonprofit. Jimmy. We also have Octavia Derby. Octavia runs a nonprofit called Octavia's Kitchen, She serves homemade kitchen food at St. James Park twice a week, hundreds of meals every day. Both Jimmy and Octavia are very involved in the unhoused community. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Appreciate all your good work.
Hi everyone, my name is Abhishek. I'm from Rotary Club of Silicon Andhra. I'm a guest of Ed Korea. I work for Deloitte Consulting. My office is right here in San Jose. Very honored to be here. I'm also playing a role of public image, social media and training contact this year in the district governor's team.
Well, welcome, Abhishek.
Thank you. Very honored to be here.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
coming. Appreciate it. Hi, Mick.
Hello, Mr. President. My guest today is a Rotarian for the past 37 years, the past president of the Rotary Club in Hermosillo, Sonora, Mexico, and my father-in-law, Mr. Jesus Sosa.
Welcome, Jesus. Jesus, make sure you get prepared. You are the program today, so it'll be a few minutes. But David, go ahead.
Thank you, President. And my classification, David, is David Ginsburg, new classification at Temple Bethel. So I want to introduce a guest of our speaker today, Amelia Garcia, who is a sophomore in film production at Loyola Marymount. Thank you.
Welcome, Amelia. Hi, Jan.
Hello again, President Steve. I'd like to introduce my guest, my friend and neighbor, Brian Vanderveer.
Welcome, Brian. Señor Adolfo, ¿cómo estás?
Steve, ¿cómo estás? How you doing, everyone? My name is Adolfo. I just want to recognize my sponsor, Mr. Bundy. He forced me to be here, so I'm happy to be here. And I have two my friends, Art Cervantes. He's a filmmaker and a media master, and Guillermo Montes. He represents a new vodka. It's called Tahoe Blue, but right now he's a delivery boy. Thank you.
Adolfo. Can we recognize Adolfo? Give him a round of applause. He catered today. He's got a before you clap. He has a restaurant called Mezcal that's a block or so from here, a couple blocks. Fabulous restaurant, the best Mexican restaurant in San Jose. And as someone who formerly owned small businesses, it was hard enough before COVID. You can all just imagine what it's been like for people like Adolfo for the last 18 months. So all of you, walk over there, go spend money, drink tequila, enjoy your dinner, and give him a hearty hand clasp. But let's give him a round of applause. Fernando, ¿cómo estás?
Hola, Esteban. We would have been here earlier, but we were chasing a dog that got out of the house, and here we are. My grandson, Christopher Rochin, he's a graduate from Bellarmine. He's a sophomore at NYU's Institute of Film and TV, and I thought he'd like to hear our speaker today.
Thank you, Fernando.
Christopher, estás suelta.
Welcome, Chris. Chris actually was on a panel of community members and helped our project, Urban Confluence, a lot a couple of years ago. So Chris, I haven't forgotten. Thank you for that. Our club was founded in 1914, so it's been around for about 107 years. During that time, we have now had 5,308 meetings. Today is number 5,308. That's a lot of meetings. So I was thinking about that this morning. And Bert's grandfather, Joseph George, had perfect attendance for decades. And then Glenn George had perfect attendance for decades. And then Bert George has had perfect attendance for 40 years or something like that. So I calculated how many meetings the George family has attended in a row in these 71 years, 81 years since 1940. So if somebody can stand up and guess and get close to the number of meetings they've attended without your calculator, stand up and testify and throw out a number. Oh, come on, somebody make a dumb guess. Bert, why don't you make a dumb guess? Who said 4,000? That's a good guess. Anybody else? 3,800. Anybody else? 41. Anybody else? 2042. Horrible, horrible guess, Heather. Really bad guess. Heather didn't get an A in arithmetic. So the winner is Terry Chapman, and she's going to win. The number is 3,408. So well done, Terry. And Terry wins a bag of the world's greatest walnuts. Terry, come on up. These walnuts were grown by the Silker family. And then Carl assured me what they do, they have a unique process. They take each walnut, they put it in a small box, and then they wrap it with a ribbon, and then they ship it, individual walnuts, to the packer, and then they unpack it, they take the walnuts out, they carefully crack the walnuts, and then they end up in this bag. So, Terry. And Bert, that's pretty good. Well done. I want to thank the membership committee again. Many of you were here last week. Tom Coombs, you can be quiet for like 1 minute. Come on. Come on. Bring it on, big brother. If I were in a fining mood right now, you know who it would be? Tom Coombs. So first I want to thank my buddy Jerry Greer. Jerry, you're here somewhere. Would you stand up? Jerry, stand up. Jerry Greer, everyone. One of the toughest jobs in our club is running membership committee. Jerry did it for 3 years. Jerry, what did that feel like, about 20? Yeah. And brought in lots of members, did it through COVID. We maintained our numbers of about 450 through COVID. Jerry's really one of the good guys. And then when he had had enough, and I asked Matt Bell to replace him, Matt, of course, said yes, and many of you were here last week. So approximately 50 of you last week stood up and took the pledge. I don't know if you can see my wristband, but this wristband means that I'm committed to getting one new member in the next year. For those of you who are not here last week, come see me after the meeting, and I'll give you a wristband, and then that means you're committed to doing that also, and this is how we're going to make our club stronger and stronger. And if you think about it, it's really a gift to friends when you bring them as a guest and you bring them into Rotary. You know, someone might not like it the first time, but if we all look at our lives without Rotary, my life would be largely much emptier, and it's been very full largely because of Rotary. So we had a group that Leslie has named the COVID cohort, and the COVID cohort are the people who joined during COVID. They joined the club. Every week they were on Zoom. They didn't get to see one another. They didn't get to do this and have fun and be with their friends. By the way, I've noticed a pattern. My first week, I think we had 163 people here, and then last week I think we had like 91. This week there are about 74. So if you guys are willing to come in about a month, there'll only be about 7 of us here, and we'll just have a little private meeting, and that'll be the agenda. So. I want to welcome Dominic Urrutia. Dominic, you want to come up? So Dominic, thanks. Dominic joined the club on February 18th of 2020. All of you think about this. So he probably came, did he come to one meeting, maybe 2? None? 1. So he came to one meeting, and then he missed about 100 of them. And so he's been introduced. But I didn't tell him I was going to do this. But Dominic, take 1 minute and just tell us about yourself now that you're here in the room with everyone.
Sure, thank you. I am a native of Lodi, California, but I call San Jose my adopted hometown. I went to San Jose State as a student. I started working in one Spartan Nation. Started working in the athletics department as a freshman, and the rest was history. I've never left. I am working in development now, so I'm trying to raise resources for our student athletes to help my guest, Tobruk. And so if anyone wants to come to a San Jose State football game or any other contest event this year, we're looking forward to having you out. So glad to be here.
Thank you, and welcome, Dominic. Also, we have a new member named Catherine Vandeveer, and her husband, Brian, is here today. Catherine's not here, but Brian's here, and I want you all to shower him with love so that we can convince him that he should become a member. So that was my first pitch, Brian. Next, big fun, would Joanna and Bob please come up? So Bob Rao has been a friend of mine for 40 years or 50 years or something, and his daughter, Joanna, has been my friend now for a few months. Come on all the way up. And they are both new members. They've both been accepted in the last month or so, and I thought we'd have some fun today. So Bob's going to introduce Joanna, and Joanna is going to introduce Bob. So please welcome them both.
Hi, I'm so pleased today to introduce my dad, Bob Rao. Dad was raised in San Francisco. He was the first graduating class of 8th graders from St. Stephen's Elementary School in 1956. From there, he went on to St. Ignatius and then San Francisco City College and San Jose State, where he majored in advertising. Dad's life goal was to start his own ad agency. So he spent the next few years working at ad agencies in San Francisco and Palo Alto, and then opened his own firm right here in San Jose, Rao, Good, Darlow, and Barnes. Among their many accomplishments, Rao, Good, Darlow, and Barnes introduced to the world Mrs. Fields cookies. He brought Acura automobiles to the West Coast and handled a division of General Electric. My dad personally wrote the marketing plan for the Edenvale area of San Jose and created the marketing plan for San Jose's redevelopment agency. Rao, Good, Darlow, and Barnes won national, regional, and local creative awards for its work and was recognized by Advertising Age magazine as one of the top 500 agencies in the U.S. And maybe most notably, the agency was asked to help change the worldwide image of San Jose in anticipation of building the convention center. As part of those efforts, my dad, this man, coined the city's slogan, crowning San Jose the capital of Silicon Valley. Along the way, my dad taught advertising at San Jose State, was a 23-year member of his downtown San Jose Rotary, and a 12-year member of the Loma Prieta School Board, and always a promoter of downtown San Jose. He's been married to my mom, Darlene, for 50 years, lives on top of the mountain in Los Gatos, and has 2 kids, me and my brother Josh, and 7 grandchildren. I'm so happy you decided to join Rotary with me again, Dad. Thank you.
Now talk about somebody to be proud of. I can hardly believe it that my daughter Joanna is joining Rotary. Good enough? Here's Joanna's story. She was raised in the Santa Cruz Mountains, so she knows her way around a hammer, a shovel, a chainsaw, and you name it. She's quite adept at building anything, painting anything, whatever. Raised in the mountains, she went to Loma Prieta Grammar School up in the mountains, and then to Los Gatos High School. She did her undergrad work at the University of UC San Diego, studying literature, English and French literature, of all things. She then went off to York University in England and studied Renaissance literature for her master's degree. Then, somewhere along the way, she studied at New York University, acting, and actually for the American Musical Theater a few years ago, she won Best Actress and Singers, and maybe someday we'll get her to sing for us. She's been on tennis teams, rowing teams, sailing teams. You can't say she doesn't have a variety of interests. So after her master's degree, Joanna decided she's going to become an attorney. So she went to Boston University. Another attorney. This club has a few. So she went to Boston University where she got her law degree. Today, Joanna is Assistant General Counsel at Deloitte, where she handles their U.S. clients in technology and the media industries. She heads Deloitte's strategic relationships and pro bono arrangements. But best of all, she's mother to my 2 grandkids. I have one that's 3 and one that's 1, Ross and Dominic. She's married to her husband, Dylan, another attorney. And she lives in the historic district of Vendome in downtown San Jose. So I'm so proud to introduce my daughter, Joanna, and as a fellow Rotarian. Please try to get to know her. She's a joy. Thank you.
Welcome again to Joanna and Bob. I want to welcome and congratulate our new club board directors, Terry Chapman. In fact, if you're here, please stand up, Terry, Mike Fulton, Tim Gill, and Helen Lambert. Anybody else? Yeah, 1, 2. Welcome. And I want you to remember how much work these board members do. It's sizable, and it's kind of the lifeblood of our club. And also, we have some new foundation board trustees, and that would be Audrey Fox, Sean O'Kane, and Mauricio Cordova. I know Sean's there. I saw him. Sean, stand up. Mauricio's here. Audrey's here. Thank you all. Thank you for doing the good work. Also, is Gary Giannini here? I don't think so. Gary, one of the privileges of being president is we, as president, get to choose one former president to be on the board, and I chose Gary. And that was from really a wealth of riches of wonderful people. If you look at our past presidents, 20 or 30 of whom are still alive, there's a lot of wisdom, a lot of knowledge, both of Rotary and of the world. And so Gary agreed to join me, and I really trust him. And so when you see him, thank him also. One comment about Zoom. I've noticed that some of you like to Zoom when you are here in the Summit Center, which is fine. So if you do so, please feel free to. It's not a problem. But you must mute on Zoom. Make sure you mute your mic, and also on your computer, mute the speaker. So there's 2 mutes involved in order to avoid feedback loops that can happen. So again, anybody who's doing Zoom, please do those 2 mutes. And with that, I'd like to bring up my friend David Ginsborg to introduce our fine speaker today. David?
Good afternoon. That's for the folks on Zoom. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Even more so during COVID, the program committee has leveraged Zoom to recruit speakers of truly national stature to discuss the critical issues of the day. Today's speaker good right there? Wonderful. All right. So, today's speaker, Tricia, no different. She's here to discuss how digital media is revolutionizing how we communicate. Tricia is among our local treasures. We're setting trends in our region and throughout the nation. Currently head of Makla Studio, her films have won numerous awards, screened at film festivals, and aired on public television throughout the United States. For those not familiar with her studio, they are an arm of Makla and operate a free and open production center for neighborhood, low-income, and mostly Latino youth ages 12 to 18. Recently remodeled with the help from our club, amongst many, they use this space to truly spotlight untold stories. Many of us may know Tricia best for her work directing and producing the documentary, Changing Boundaries. Thank you, Norm and crew. The history of San Jose, which highlighted the story of working people, political leaders, and dreamers who built our city. Most recently, Tricia co-directed Mi Camino, a hybrid animated documentary opera based on the stories of California farm workers during the pandemic. Tricia has taught digital filmmaking and film studies at Santa Clara University, UC Santa Cruz, San Francisco State University, and Drexel University. With a BA from UC Berkeley, go Bears, in both psychology and Chicano studies. She graduated from San Francisco State University with an MFA in film production. Additionally, she has volunteered with organizations ranging from being a founding member of Create TV to Red Ladder Theater Company. And she's especially passionate about mentoring emerging BIPOC and women filmmakers. An advocate for disability rights, diversity, and equity in theater and adoption education. She lives with her husband and 2 children right here in downtown San Jose. Please give a warm Rotary welcome to Tricia. Thank you.
All right, we're going to get this right for my height and my level of elocution, because I definitely tend to talk. I also tend to walk around a lot, so I'm going to try to stay near the microphone. Thank you, David, for that very sweet introduction. Thank you all for having me today. It's always fun to look out at a crowd like this because living and working in downtown San Jose, it's so overlapping, right? It's like David and I are friends from synagogue, and our kids are the same age, and we've been raising them together all these years. And you know, I see Heather, and Heather Lerner's the one who got my child to join children's musical theater when he was 9 years old. And I see Norm, and Norm and I made a film together. So I just love the intimacy of a gathering like this, and I'm really, really glad that you invited me to be here. So thank you so much for the invitation. Let's see if our tech goes smoothly as we practiced. Nothing for me on my screen. Of course, the tech's not going perfectly. Dual monitor, going to get it over there. Practiced, I promise.
This is a likely case of the blind leading the blind. In fact, that's exactly what it is. John During, I think we've got our multiple desktop phenomenon.
When we get to the part where I discuss my manifesto as a filmmaker, you're going to see technology always goes wrong. It's part of the fun. It's part of the challenge. I never let it get in the way of the storytelling, but it's definitely an issue. And if you don't mind me being right next to you, I'm just going to start talking because I know what I'm here to talk about, and the pictures will help. I'm a visual learner. I'm a visual stylist. So for me, the pictures and the video always help tell the story, but I'm perfectly happy to begin. The title of the talk today is Representation Matters, Shining Light on Power and Storytelling. And that is relevant because it's part of my origin story as a maker. Thank you. Excellent. You're hired. So it's part of my origin story as a maker. I loved movies as a kid, and it's part of why I'm so happy to be here today. I could not love doing anything more than talking about movies. I can do it for hours. Anyone who knows me knows if you go out to see a film with me, that also includes the hour or two afterwards where we're going to deconstruct it and talk about every element of the film. It's truly my greatest pleasure in life. But I had no idea that it was a career. Growing up, I thought I wanted to be a teacher, and I did become a teacher of film many years later, and I still teach film. But I just didn't recognize that that was a career that was available to people. And I know that part of that is because I'd never seen people like me making movies. I had no access to seeing anybody who looked like me. I'd heard of Steven Spielberg. I knew who George Lucas was, right? There were big players in the field, but I'd never seen anyone who looked like me telling those stories. So when I went to college, I ended up following my parallel passion, which is social justice. And I made up a major because it's Berkeley and you can do that. So I was a social science field major, and my emphasis was on working with Spanish-speaking battered women and children. That's what I wrote my senior thesis on. I was a Spanish minor, and psychology was the sort of overarching frame, right? So with that background, I ended up moving to Mexico and becoming a translator after college, and came back and was a community organizer. And the organization that hired me at the ripe age of 22, ready to change the world, was called Marin Abused Women's Services. They brought me on to, instead of providing services to women who were in abusive relationships, we were supposed to tackle the issue from multiple other angles. We did do court watches to see how the issues moved through the courts and to start to identify where the problems there. We did a huge media advocacy campaign where we paid attention to how those issues were presented in the print media and on television. I started young feminist clubs in multiple local high schools to start talking about dating violence with girls at a really young age hopefully, before any violence had occurred with them. So I was trucking along doing that job for several years, and then I had the bright idea with a teeny tiny grant from the Department of Justice to make a video. No idea, didn't know what that was gonna take, what it was gonna mean, and we did. We made a video that was folks in the community confronting conditions that were helping contribute to violence against women and girls. So in one scene, they were in a record store and there were violent posters and they spoke up. In another scene, it was a family party dinner and a partner was being verbally abusive. So what happened for me as the client on that set, not the maker in any way, I was the nonprofit client, was I saw a 30-year-old woman director. I got to be on set with a 30-year-old woman director. I was probably 26, 27 at that time. And when you talk about having an epiphany moment, I had an epiphany moment. It was one of those experiences where I was like, timer, I'm just gonna talk and y'all are gonna be ready to go back to work. Let me keep track of myself. So I had an epiphany moment. I'd never seen it happen before, and I watched her over the course of that production, and I was like, oh, she's just a really good leader. Not just, she's a really good leader. She's a very clear communicator. She has no trouble making decisions. She's able to work with her crew and you get the best of them and get what she needs. And I thought, I feel like I could do those things. I feel like I do those things as a community organizer and as an educator. So I started taking film classes on the side at a community college. And within one course, I was like, okay, graduate school, here I come. And I decided to apply to film school. To get into film school, you have to have made work. So I made work on the side. I got an internship where I had access to an editing system, and I just started making work on the side and got into San Francisco State's program. Their program is a nexus of social justice and filmmaking for folks like me. It's a place where you can really dive deep into telling authentic stories, telling stories of people in our community. So that brings my origin story a lot closer to kicking off my film career, which I've now been doing for a couple of decades. But that's the kind of windy path that got me here, okay? So one thing I want to do with you all is to think a little bit about a movie that had an impact on you during your childhood. So I'm a teacher. This is going to be like a little bit of group involvement. Y'all are going to have to think. You're going to have to talk to each other. So think of a movie that had a big impact on you during your childhood. And turn and tell your neighbor. Okay, let's come back together. See, you guys want to go out to the movies with me and discuss afterwards, right? It's a fun topic. So you've identified a movie that was important to you as a child. I recently did a challenge where I identified 10 films that had an impact on me. This is my Facebook friends, right? These are the things we all love to talk about. The one you'll see in the upper right there is Bad News Bears. I was a total tomboy. I was a hardcore baseball player. I was not like most girls that I knew. And I had never seen anything like that on screen before. I was thrilled to the bottom of my toes to see a tomboy playing baseball. I couldn't believe it. I felt so seen. I felt so heard, right? And that was me as a very, very little girl. And from that moment, I developed an obsession with movies about sports. It's still one of my very, very favorite genres. I still play sports. I skate roller derby. I play basketball. It's really central to sort of my sense of self and my sense of being a woman, right? So that film was huge for me. When I did this challenge last year, I sort of rounded it out because I have a much more sort of extensive, but I didn't get all like fancy and academic about it. It was like, what touched my heart? What told a story that I hadn't heard before, right? So you'll also see the bottom left is The Sound of Music. I am a huge musical theater geek. As I mentioned, my son is a musical theater performer, and every single year my mom and I would watch The Sound of Music together. It was usually on around Christmas time, right? There would be like a sort of tradition. We would watch it together. Both my kids joined my family through adoption, and my daughter happened to be born in December. We were in a hotel in El Paso. She was teeny tiny. I barely knew how to hold her yet. I was so nervous. I was lying on a bed in a hotel room with my mom, and The Sound of Music came on. And I just was, I was emotional, right? New mom, kind of freaked out, but oh my goodness, this full circle moment of like, I have my daughter and I'm here with my mom and The Sound of Music is on and it's my favorite movie. So that's on the list as well, as you can see. Now, I'm going to put the titles up for you, because one of the things I do as a professor is just mention a film. You need to tell me who it was directed by. And I will wait, right? I'll say, go ahead, Google it, look it up, figure out who directed it, because that's a very vital part of the story. Especially for me as a director, a lot of folks don't understand, what is that job exactly? What does the director do? What does that look like? My mother is always like, oh, that George Clooney, he's so amazing. And I'm like, well, Mom, sometimes he does direct, but I'd be like, Mom, he's just the actor, right? There was a director who got him to that place. She does not care to hear it. But, so this is my list with the names, given, of who the folks are who directed these films that were so vital to me. And going down the list, Moonlight, some of you may have seen, by Barry Jenkins. It was the first time I'd ever seen queer representation in the African-American community on screen in a way that was just beautiful, beautifully shot, beautifully told, heart-wrenching story. So that makes it up. You know why I love The Sound of Music. Bad News Bears, Tomboy. Whale Rider was one of the first films I'd ever seen with a little girl of color. I'm Mexican-American, right? So I finally got a girl in Bad News Bears, but I'd never seen a girl of color. So Whale Rider's a little Maori girl who's a leader in her community. And I was already probably in my 20s by the time I saw that, but boy, did that touch my heart. Juno talks about issues of adoption, which, as I mentioned, is very close to my heart as well. Jane Campion is just one of my favorite female directors of all time with The Piano. So you can kind of go down the list. Selma by Ava DuVernay, she's like, we are going to be best friends. At some point, that's going to happen. She is amazing. I love her work. We're very, very aligned in terms of our theory and philosophy of how you make films. So she's definitely on the list. And Love and Basketball by Gina Prince Bythewood. Again, sports movies, girls on screen. Her film inspired me to think about how could I make a film about girls in sports. And so for my senior thesis at San Francisco State, it was about teenage girl basketball players who were girls of color. And the film centered on their friendship. This was a narrative film. So I scouted actors at Berkeley and San Francisco State on the basketball team who happened to be drama majors because they had to ball. Like, that was important. They couldn't fake the basketball. We were going to play basketball on screen a lot. And I developed the script with them in collaboration. And it was about the friendship between those two girls. And they weren't pregnant, and they weren't in a gang. They were athletes who were strong and powerful and struggling with friendship issues like any other girls, right? But I had not seen that on screen before. So that's why I made that particular film. 400 Blows, which is a French film by Francois Truffaut. I have a very, very vague memory, but a true one, of my dad taking me to see that before I could read the subtitles. So we were whispering. I'm sure we were super annoying to people, but that was what my dad would do with me. He would take me and just expose me to everything. And if we could talk about it, it was okay for me to see. I saw some really not cool, scary movies that way. But that was my dad's philosophy in the 70s, right? Okay, so now here's another quick share. What famous actor would play you in the movie of your life? Okay? And you can't all pick George Clooney, okay? Okay, I'm going to pull you back together. I'm going to pull you back together on this one. If you were able to quickly come up, with someone who might play you, I'm happy for you. I know that when I'm asked this question, I'm like, okay, who are the Mexican American or Latino? I'll go more broadly. Who are the actors that would play me? Gosh, I don't really look like Selma Hayek. She's not really my vibe, but I guess I'll cast her because I have like 3 choices. So I asked this question because I think it's really illustrative of who ends up on screen, right? Who gets embedded in our hearts early on. Some of us have to relate to folks who don't look like us, who aren't from our cultures and communities, because that's all we got. So if you're brown or black or disabled or queer or any number of other sort of subgroups, you may not have had a quick and easy answer. That might have been a hard question for you, right? And here, with my work and with Makla Studio, we're really trying to switch that up so that when our kids, when we ourselves as adults look at the screen, our story's reflected back to us, right? So this is just a quick little collage I put together to show you some stills from some of my films. And you're gonna see the commonality there. They're folks of color. That's what I'm really committed to doing. You can see the lower middle are my teenage girl basketball players. You can see a still from Changing Boundaries, the Japanese identification cards that we got from Ministry San Jose. You can just sort of get a sense of the range of color and light that comes through when I try to frame stories of folks that I'm working with in the community, right? So that's what I want my screen to look more and more and more like. And that's what I'm committed to doing as a maker. I do want to do a time check because I have some video clips to show and I might have to skip a few. We're okay for now? Okay. So this one is a trailer for a film that I directed, that I produced called Stable Life. And this one was nominated for an Emmy, so it's kind of my big calling card film. It's a small film. It was about an hour long and it played all over PBS nationally. It began as a story of labor, we thought. There was a Latino community behind the scenes at the Bay Meadows racetrack before they knocked it down. All immigrant families. Families, children, living in the stables with their parents while their parents were working with the horses. I'd never heard of it, and I'm pretty connected in the Latino community in the Bay Area. I had no idea it was back there. And my co-producer and I thought it would be about labor. We thought it would be about labor violations and, what are the conditions back there. We ended up sort of embedding with one family over the course of 3.5 years. And that family story ended up becoming much more clearly an immigration story because they were a mixed immigration status family, which is quite common, where some of the children had been born in the US, some had not. The parents were undocumented. The younger boys were American citizens and attending school. Very complicated in terms of like how much their family could move or visit or have that kind of fluidity. This boy, who you'll see on the screen, he's their oldest boy, and he was a jockey. So he's in the front of the house, making thousands and thousands of dollars as a jockey, and his parents are in the back of the house cleaning the stables, while his little brothers run around and love their lives. I mean, they did not mind living with all those horses and hay and friends and fun. It was an interesting life, all living in one room together. So this piece, we got that kind of access, right? So what did we bring to this piece as makers? Cultural competency. Most of the crew was Mexican-American. Most of us spoke Spanish. I was brought on because I was bilingual. We gained access and we gained trust. A lot of what I did in producing that piece was hang out with Dionisia, the mother of the family, and I would cook with her. And I would be at her son's birthday parties. And I would come to, Christmas celebrations. And we needed to sort of really gain trust and be with the family for that piece. So I'm gonna play you, this is a short trailer of that piece just to give you a sense. Hopefully the tech will work. It's just music for this one. So it's not so. You have subtitles, so that helps with the music not playing through. going to stop that there because I do have a timeline, it seems, and I want to make sure I get through some of the material. That gives you a sense of that film. Are we going to have any luck with bringing audio for the other clips? Is there anything I can do to help? I will keep talking, but I definitely would love to have audio. I'm not going to show Changing Boundaries on the assumption that some of you all in the room have seen this one, and I am running short on time. It's available online. We can share it with you. As mentioned, I produced that with Norm Klein, and that was an amazing outpouring of community support. We had 21 folks who we interviewed for that piece from all angles. We spread out from sort of historians who could give the traditional documentary view to actual folks. Jimmy Yamaichi at the Japanese American Museum, Blanca Alvarado, who I know spoke here recently, talked about her early activism days. We went into people's homes. Nonprofits opened up their locations to us. We shot at History Park. We shot at Makla. It was truly a community effort in all the ways that matter to me, where we were really trying to get at the surface of like, what are the social stories? How did San Jose get built? What did that look like? And History San Jose provided us with thousands and thousands of photos and artifacts. So that's one that we can save for later. This is the graduate school filmmaking manifesto that I mentioned. And this is important to me because I bring this forward into my work today, and I bring it forward into my work with youth, with interns who I'm teaching and apprenticing to try to get them trained up in the field. Fundamentally, you can see, celebrate mistakes. This is a moving target. It's a growing art form. We're going to mess up. We're going to shoot things incorrectly and learn from it and get it right the next time. The interview's not going to go perfectly. What are we going to do to prepare better? I mean, it's just a process that we're constantly getting better at. And I want to bring that to the work with young people. It's okay to try things. It's okay to experiment. Please do. And often in editing, we can fix a lot of mistakes. I don't foreground that part, but we can. So get in there, right? And just follow what's interesting to you, and we'll get it up on screen. So that's my political manifesto coming out of grad school that I've been trying to live for the last couple decades. And this is the call to action, which is the Makla Studio piece of this. The data tells a story. I know a lot of people are data heads. I am not. I'm an anecdotal story person because I love people's stories. But the data is pretty abysmal in the field of film production. Okay. So I just pulled one stat. The USC Annenberg Center for Communication is constantly tracking representation on screen, television, movies, and then people working in the industry. And so I just pulled numbers for Latinx folks, just to give you a little snapshot into how we're doing what we're doing at Makla Studio, right? So 3% of featured leads, only 3%. Only 3% of producers are Latinx, 4% of directors, and when you break that into women who are Latina, it's 1 in 1,335. So we're dealing with some pretty hard numbers that we need to try to help our young people break into this industry, right? So for those of you who love data, there's a little bit of data for you. And I love this Annenberg School of Communication research. It's very illustrative and really interesting. And so the call to action at Makla is education, employment, and social impact. Those are the pillars that we're working with here. I had to include in the upper right a picture of Emilio, who you met at the beginning of the lunch. He's my intern. He's like a perfect example of a youth from the community who's interested in film, who's shown up and has done great work with me. And that said, we're going to watch a piece that he edited of the work that Makla Studio has produced so far, and then I'm going to be done, and there'll be time for Q&A, like maybe 2 minutes or something. Makla Studio opened in January, so COVID, y'all. I've been art directing people in their own homes, helping them shoot on their cell phones, helping them think about costumes and lighting from afar. We're finally back out in the field. But it's been quite challenging to get the studio up and running, but we've been doing it, and we've been doing really great, and we have a vast range of subject matter. So we're about 7 months in to Makla Studio officially being launched, and Emilio has put together this short piece to show you the work we've made so far. We don't have audio.
on that laptop. That's the reason we weren't getting it. We had turned off the speakers. We got it in the room. We got it on the line.
I know. I just want to see where it is. I'm getting it in the Zoom.
And in the room.
I know. I know.
Okay. It's coming through, it's clipping, but
Aquí en Sagrado Corazón, a mí me han ayudado a salir adelante, a
and it's
conseguir un
coming
trabajo
through.
para mi esposo. Y aquí en el Sagrado Corazón, a mí me
HDMI
ayudan
magic.
que necesitamos para salir adelante con las campañas.
Network bandwidth is low. Look out. I'm going through the wireless. Now I got it back.
Is that what the Fed was doing? There's an individual meter for every single channel.
Okay, all we have time for is for me to sign off. So, big takeaways, media literacy. Who is making the media and who is the target audience? I hope to ruin your viewing experiences for a little while, where you can't stop thinking about that question as you're watching stuff. Pay attention to who directed it, who made it, who's it for. Produce authentic stories, and my fundamental, most important tenet is please hire women and people of color to help tell those authentic stories. Maka Studio has a new website, makastudio.org. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and my personal is @FlockaFilms on Instagram. There's no time for questions, but I just really want to thank you so much for having me here today. And I'm happy to stay and speak to anyone, or go outside and speak to anyone, masks on, who wants to connect. Thank you so much.
Just a reminder, she was serious. She will answer questions. So if afterwards you'd like to talk to Tricia, please do so. Leslie.
You need to turn on that mic. I don't hear it.
No, I know.
Bring one.
Do now.
There she
Parking,
is.
if you bring your validation, we will take care of the parking fee. If you don't want to wait in line, you can just skip that and pay the $1 or $2 that you'll probably owe. The first 90 minutes are free. If you've been here less than that, you can just get out of jail, no payment. But again, thanks for your patience as we work through the new system.
Thanks, Leslie. Another apology about the lack of cool air in here. We are diligently working with our good friends at the City of San Jose to get the HVAC fixed. We have Carl Salas helping us. Leslie's working on it. We're going to have Cindy and Jeff Faulkner help. We are going to do whatever is necessary. We are hopeful that by next week we will have proper ventilation and cool air in here. So again, apologies. A reminder about the wristbands. If any of you would like to commit to bringing in a new member, I've got wristbands for you up here. Please come see me after the meeting. Also a reminder for questions in the future, all of you Red Badgers, you get to go to the front of the line when we have Q&A with our speakers. I want to thank Tricia again. Tricia, a donation on your behalf will be made to your organization. You're welcome. And next week we have Abe Smith speaking on cybersecurity. And with that, meeting adjourned. Thank you all.